I'm Paul Joseph Belisario from the International Indigenous Peoples Movement for Self-Determination and Liberation, a global movement of indigenous peoples based here in Manila, Philippines. As part of the Cop27 KAIROS delegation to the Cop27 negotiations in Egypt, a lot has been learned and a lot of experiences have been gained in learning a lot of knowledge from different indigenous peoples networks, from the experiences of other movements and environmental defenders across the country. And from this experience, we are continuing the work in forwarding the rights of indigenous peoples in relation to their defense of land and their territories and waters that will help in achieving climate justice. Our continuing work in defense of land rights and in forwarding indigenous people's right includes our work against judicial harassment of our indigenous peoples, which are, a lot of them are indigenous peoples, environment defenders. This means fighting the many trumped up cases, criminalizations, and the encroachments of their rights as communities, as organizations, which stop them from defending their lands, practicing their culture in defense of the environment. We are also continuing our work helping our networks and members across the globe in rebuilding different indigenous peoples' youth organizations. This is done through our projects in continuing the intergenerational knowledge, practices, and traditions from the old generations to the new blood of indigenous peoples who will stand and defend their ancestral territories in defense of the environment, their forests, and their rivers. Also part of our continuing campaign is our campaign to stop the militarization, bombing, and the destruction of rural communities. On many instances, these issues of militarization and bombing has been underreported or invisible to the media, to a lot of people across the world, and a lot of affected communities are indigenous peoples communities. Our campaign is building on understanding the data, building the data of those affected by heavy bombings, militarization, and the attacks on the communities in many countries here in the Philippines, and also in many countries and communities in Asia and across the world. The building of weapons, the use of destructive weapons and armaments of the big countries, of those who not only pollute a lot of countries in the global south, but also destroys using their arms of weapons of mass destruction. Our campaign to stop the bombing and militarization of indigenous peoples communities and rural communities is extremely important in our campaign to climate justice, because first and foremost, it doesn't only destroy their communities but also destroys the environment which are affected by these bombings and these attacks. As we participate in the Climate Action Week, we call on everyone to stand and support the fight of indigenous peoples for their land, for their rights and their territories, because essentially this fight is not only for the rights of indigenous peoples but for their future generation, and for them to continue their work as the steward of the environment, the protector of our biodiversity. This is very much important. Your help and your support for indigenous peoples communities is our big step in achieving climate justice.